most people do want love and connection in their life. So when you start dating someone who is fearful or fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant, their interest in you is genuine. They're not trying to deceive you. Their interest is absolutely genuine. They want to get to know you. They're oftentimes quite fascinated. These folks are often usually quite charming as well. They're also quite present. An interesting thing about fearful avoidance, because they come from such chaotic homes, they have a high degree of hypervigilance to them. Fearful avoidants actually make terrific partners in the beginning. Until the attachment starts deepening and some of those fears come online. But you could imagine a child who had to learn for their own survival to be able to read the emotions of the people in the house. So if their parents were frightening, right? If they were enduring a level of abuse and they had to realize, okay, I'm walking on eggshells. I need to keep a low profile today. I need to avoid dad because he's in a mood. So they become extremely good at reading the room, understanding other people's temperaments and emotions. So that's the hypervigilance, and they bring that skill into adulthood. So I can walk into a room and sort of read people's temperaments real quick.
Yeah.
It's a skill. What that also translates into when you're dating someone is intense presence. So when I'm with you, or when a fearful avoidant is with you, they are very present. They want to hear what you have to say. They want to hear your stories. They want to understand you because they're trying to discern, can I trust this person?
Okay.
So it's quite fun in the beginning, actually. I would say that the same with a dismissive avoidant person. They could be very present. They could be very charming. And it's not a deception. They're not deceiving you in terms of their level of interest in you. If a dismissive avoidant is interested in you, you will know, right? They will spend their time with you, which is something that a dismissive avoidant doesn't do too easily because they're very protective over their time. They'll invite you into their home, which oftentimes indicates that they feel comfortable with you, right? They don't always do that so quickly. But all of this during the honeymoon phase, when you're just getting to know someone, the attachment styles that we're talking about and the patterning and the fears that come up only happen a little bit later on in the process once that emotional bond deepens with someone. So once, like, let's say you and I are dating, we've had a couple of dates, it's been a couple of months, then we start having some discussions about, let's take this to the next level, let's be exclusive, let's make that commitment. When that emotional bond deepens, that's at the point at which some of the fears start to surface. So oftentimes for an anxious partner, for example, when a dismissive partner starts to pull back because they're feeling fearful, it feels like deception. It feels like everything was going fine and we were having a great time, and you told me you really liked me and all of a sudden you don't want to spend time with me. It feels like a deception. It's not. And you talked about intentionality at the beginning. And this is what I want to say is that it's not dismissive avoidance and fearful avoidance. They're not specifically trying to inflict pain or intentionally hurt. And I want to make, I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second here. I try not to do this, but I read the comments. I always read the comments from all of our videos together. Again, I thank all of your audience for their thoughtful comments. And one of the things that I did see pop up once or twice is that some people thought that I was making excuses for the dismissive avoidant or the fearful avoidant. And I want to be very clear that, if you're in a relationship with anyone and it doesn't feel right to you and it's not meeting your needs, whatever those needs are, I'm never going to suggest that you stay in that relationship, right?
Yeah.
The reason that we talk about attachment styles is that you can recognize in yourself where you sit so that you can make improvements to yourself, and also to also bring solace and peace to someone who is struggling to understand why they might have been, for example, discarded by a dismissive avoidant, because that could be extremely painful. So I talk about this again to say that 99% of the time, people are struggling with their own traumas and their own ways of dealing with things. And it's not something you said, it's not something you did, it's not something that you triggered. So I want folks to understand that I look at knowledge as power and to help everyone heal, right? From any experiences that you have. So I hope that clears things up.
Well, I want to the extent that I know I don't need to defend you, okay? But certainly I want to defend the position, is that there's a big difference between creating understanding versus making an excuse. You know, by clarifying all this and understanding why in so many cases, whether it is a man or woman who is afraid or is feeling uncertainty or is confused, in most cases, they're not doing anything intentionally to hurt you. In my videos, I always say most men are good guys. They're just bad daters. And I'm saying that a little tongue in cheek, but the fact is most human beings are rather poor at emotionally regulating themselves, having a good emotional maturity, having good relationship skills. And this is true for men and women alike. This isn't singular. I'm sorry to say to the women that are listening to right now, you guys aren't all great at this either. You're no picnic either. Men are just as bad at this. Women are equally as bad at this as men, but oftentimes this is what happens between genders. They're doing this. So since my audience is women, there's criticism of men. So thank you for allowing me to rant for a second, because I wanted to defend your position.
Thanks.
Because I'm a big believer. That's why I do my channel, is to create understanding. So the fearful and dismissive man, and by the way, I want to take questions in a moment. So I'm going to open it up for questions. What's it going to take for that person to, for lack of better words, tear down their walls?
So I'm gonna mark that. I'm gonna mark that question down, because I want to go back to the shark analogy again. I brought up sharks for a reason, because I think it's a colorful sort of illustration. So if we go back to, I have an intense passion, love, even strong like for sharks. So let's say you say to me, okay, Bev, I know that you love sharks. Let's go on a trip and we can go cage diving. Okay, so at that point in time, this is where I'm headed, right? So at that point in time, I could be like, wow, that would be so amazing. I get to see them up close. I'm going to love the experience. I'm going to touch a shark. I've always wanted to do this. This is going to be awesome. Then we start future planning. We book the trip. We go buy our clothing and accessories, and we do all of this stuff. And we finally get there and we get on the boat and the cage is there. And you go, Bev, go ahead. This is what you've always wanted. Jump in. And at that point in time, when it becomes really real, I go, I can't do it. I almost become paralyzed with fear. I can't do it. And my fear outweighs my feelings, right? So my feelings, my love for sharks, my love for wanting to explore and understand them, all of a sudden my fears pop online, because that is really real. Now I have to get in a cage. And so it's actually that level of fear that some people, dismissive and fearful, will experience when jumping off into a relationship. And that's why you sometimes get a very sharp, what they call discard. Everything is going well, and all of a sudden you're about to jump off the boat into the cage, and you're going to, I don't know, move in together.
Yeah.
And I can't do it, I'm out. It's a panic response almost, because the fear becomes too great. So understanding that there is this fear, it does explain a lot. And I hope you found the shark analogy.
No, I love this. Excuse me, go ahead.
Well, because I was going to say that one of the things that, again, we tend to do, or dismissive avoidance, fearful avoidance, is they try to minimize the impact of the relationship. So they try to detach at the point in which their fears really come online, and they could be afraid of losing their freedom, afraid of losing their independence, having to rely on someone, afraid of vulnerability. There's a strong shame wound for people who have dismissive avoidance style. So if you get too close to me, you might discover that I'm defective, right? So that's why all of these things become very scary for them.
Let me ask you a question. And this is just something I've observed. So this is anecdotal. I've observed that many people who are avoidants, and I'll just lump them two together in the dismissive or the fearful, tend to be less expressive or emotionally expressive in a relationship. Is there any studies or anything that backs up that perception that I have? And again, this is anecdotal from my part. They're not overly verbally expressive to their partner from an affectionate perspective. I mean, and again, this is just an observation, so I can't say it as I've done a study at this, but is there any potential truth to what I've just said?
Well, there is, and it's somewhat easy to understand if we go back to the very young child who is not having their emotional needs met. They're not learning attunement, so they're also not learning good communication skills, right? So we go back to, they didn't learn how to cook, right? They didn't learn, and so what they do is they typically disconnect from their emotions, which makes it even more difficult for them to understand, okay, what am I actually feeling right now? And how do I put that into words? And how do I say it in a way that it'll actually land with someone else? So these skills weren't modeled for them.
Okay.
They can learn these skills. They certainly can, right?
Yeah.
And again, one of the things I wanted to talk about is that when people, when that emotional bond deepens and things become really real, like I'm about to jump into that cage and swim with the sharks, one of the things that people do to preserve themselves is they start to distance. They start to minimize the importance of the relationship, and they tend to use certain strategies like flaw finding. And one of the funniest shows ever is Seinfeld. I'm sure you've seen a few Seinfeld episodes. So do you remember there's a whole running joke throughout the entire series of Jerry and his dating shenanigans.
Sure.
So what was after
I know him by heart. By heart.
So after every episode, Jerry would say, "Oh, she's not for me. Her hands are too big."
Yes, man hands. She's a close talker. She's a far talker. She eats her peas with her fork. She walks around naked. I mean, like the list goes on and on. He found a flaw.
That's right. And it's only funny because it's absolutely true. So what Jerry's actually doing is he really doesn't want to get too emotionally close to anyone. If you watch his behavior, he's quite avoidant. He doesn't like conflict. He doesn't talk about his emotions. He's just there to be, the entertainment. He's always on a surface level, right? He's also, you can tell, quite anxious. He's got a low level anxiety to him. He's always a little bit riled up. So it's easy to see that he's this type of avoidant. And he goes out on a date with good intentions, and there's always something wrong with her.
I've looked at that show and I think Jerry is the anxious one. You know, probably George is the fearful avoidant. Elaine is the dismissive avoidant. And Kramer is the secure because Kramer always had a good time. I'm making that up, by the way.
Kramer's personality is funny, but he had no problem attaching to other people.
Yes, exactly. He was the most, he attached easily, but all right, we still have to answer the question. How does that fearful and dismissive person feel loved?
Okay.
Like, how do they feel it?
They feel it in the same way that every other human feels it, by feeling like they are understood.
Okay.
And this is the problem, in that, as you said earlier, we don't ask enough questions from a place of compassion, right?
Okay.
I want to understand. So if I know that my partner needs a little bit of space when we've had an argument, I won't chase after him. I will give him his space. And that's how I'm going to show that I respect and love you. And I'm also going to honor myself, because I'm going to say, listen, I would like to talk about this tonight before we go to sleep. Doesn't have to be exactly now, but I don't want to go to sleep with a heavy heart. So, in the next couple hours, let me know when you're ready. So I'm honoring myself. I'm not saying I'm not going to bring it up, but I'm also not pushing too hard. Right?
Got it.
So when you chase after someone, they, especially if they're dismissive or fearful avoidant, they will run in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
That's just what they will do, because they're trying to put space, and they're not trying to put space to harm you. They're trying to put space so that they can figure out their own emotions, what they want to say. They oftentimes really don't like conflict, because it brings up, childhood, experiences that obviously they still carry wounds. And so how do you love someone who is dismissive avoidant or fearful avoidant? You approach them, I would say, with compassionate inquiry.
Okay. Understanding and you said understanding, but compassionate inquiry.
Yeah, but I would extend that to almost anyone, because as we said earlier in our discussion, at our age, we've all, regardless of our attachment style, we've all suffered traumas.
Yes.
We all have things that we carry around. So compassionate inquiry when you're meeting someone is, I think, is a good approach for everyone. And, once you understand, okay, by the way, observation is really one of the most important things you can do as well. So someone can tell you, I mean, I've had many people on first dates say, I'm emotionally stable. And then I get to know them and I can see they're not entirely so stable, right? Their behavior would indicate otherwise. They're not.
By the way, if someone ever said that to me, I'm going to run the other way, because if you don't own your shit, then I'm not interested. Bev, I want to take questions. Okay. So, sure. Hey, everyone, I hope you've enjoyed our conversation so far. We're going to go for about another 15 minutes. Now it's time for Q&A. So if you have a question for Bev or myself, write the word question in the chat box and then post the question thereafter. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. There's a little $ in the chat box. All the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. That's a picture of him right there with his brother, Colin. It's my son who passed away almost 6 years ago. In his honor, we donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Inside Institutes, and scholarships to coaching as well. I'd like to get $50 before the end of the evening. So we appreciate the love. We have our first question that came in from Annika. I'll read it out loud, Bev. When dating, how do we determine someone's attachment style? How do we inspire a DA or an FA to be more secure?
Okay. Hi, Annika. So nice to meet you. Thank you for your question. So those are two separate questions. Determining someone's attachment style is generally best done by observing their behavior. So people have a very hard time disguising their actual patterns, unless, again, we're talking about folks who are like sociopathic or psychopath. That's not who we're talking about. We're talking about the general population. So if you give it enough time, 4 to 6 weeks, you will see patterns that emerge. And there are often clues in terms of the language that people use. I will often ask a question like, tell me about your mother. That is one of the most revealing questions that you can ask on a first date, because how they describe their childhood and their relationship to their own mother can tell you a whole lot. The second question I will ask is, tell me about your ex.
Yes.
Right. So, which again, what you're looking for is a pattern in how their accountability and what they saw is going well or not going well. But observation is your best friend here. So, someone who is dismissive avoidant will not want to spend as much time with you as someone who is anxious preoccupied. Someone who's anxious preoccupied will want to establish the relationship really quickly and sort of lock you down and, we're in a relationship and let's do this. And oftentimes it moves at lightning speed. That's, if someone's moving something at lightning speed, that should be a red flag. There could be other reasons for that. But language is also super important. So you can tell when people use certain phrases like, I've been feeling really sad and lonely. Those are generally emotional patterns of an anxious preoccupied. Whereas if someone says, I've been feeling overwhelmed and frustrated and a little angry, those are generally emotional patterns of a fearful avoidance. And so you get to know this stuff over time. And you certainly...
So how do you turn that into secure, to kind of do the second question?
Yeah, I'm going to sort of, Annika, you're not going to like my answer, because you can encourage someone to explore their own emotional patterns and to invest in personal growth, but there's no changing someone else. So you cannot move someone else from an FA to secure. If they want to change, they will do that. Now, you can certainly share with someone that, for example, you're on your own journey and that you've learned so much about yourself. And this is the work that we do at Securely Loved. I work with a number of practitioners at securelylove.com. And we work specifically on reprogramming core wounds so that you can move towards a more secure attachment style. And it really, in a couple of months, you can actually see beautiful results in your thought patterns and your emotional patterns. And it's quite fascinating because these programs sit at the subconscious level. So Annika, unfortunately, you can encourage someone to better themselves, but it's not your job and it's not your place as their partner to move them from one to another, from, let's say, dismissive to secure.
Yeah. By the way, really quickly, everybody, Bev just shared with her website, Securely Loved. There'll be a link below in the show notes and in the first comment. If you want to connect with her, if you want to check out her work, go to securelylove.com, but I'll be posting the link there. All right, we've got one more question that came in from Cheryl, who happens to be a personal friend of mine. So her question is, hey, Jonathan and Bev, how do you break it off with a fearful avoidant that you still care about in a respectful way once you know that it's not working out without making them more fearful? Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how to do that. So can you let's tell Cheryl how to go about doing that.
Yeah, Cheryl, that's a great question. And first of all, the fact that you are concerned about the impact of your actions on someone else generally speaks to your kind nature. So thank you for that. Kindness, I think, is always important in relationships. Fearful avoidants carry a strong core wound of, I will be betrayed, or someone is going to lie to me, I will be used. So they generally value honesty and they value depth of conversation because they really do want to get to know you. So if you are dating someone who's fearful avoidance and you know it's not working out, have a straight up conversation with them, right? And the way that you frame it is important. So what I'm saying is, don't ghost this person. If you ghost them, it will really trigger their betrayal wound. That's the worst thing that you can do. But you can sit down and say, I really love these qualities about you, but I'm noticing that we're not so compatible in these other areas. And maybe you would still want to be friends, or, if you are genuinely interested in this person. So I would take a direct, honest approach. Expect that the fearful avoidant will probably get a little bruised, and that's okay. A little bruised is okay. They may take a little space from you, but once they realize that you were being honest, they'll come back to you.
We said this earlier in the broadcast, learning how to speak from the heart, and coming from that sincere place. It's such an invitation for everyone to really learn how to communicate from here instead of here, because it takes practice to come really centered with your heart and what you're feeling. But as we said earlier, I think when you speak sincerely from the heart, it can certainly cause a person to feel some pain, but hopefully not enough to where they want to just abandon you because of that pain. They want to still stay at least in a cordial type of way, especially when you're ending a relationship, because that's a sign of emotional maturity in my book anyway.
100%. So, I mean, again, when you're dealing with someone that has a core wound of, I will be betrayed, or I will be used, or, and you're aware of that. So the biggest gift you can do is to give them honesty, right? Now, again, the way that you phrase it with kindness and with love is important. And I do believe that, the other thing you can do is explain. I think that a lot of times we sort of say, I don't think this is a match. It's not working out.
It's not you, it's me.
Yeah, that's it. So if you use phrases like that, it's not gonna go well, because the fearful avoidant knows that you're lying to them, right? That you're feeding them garbage, right? It's not you, it's me, it's that. But like, when I talk about honesty and depth of conversation, say to them, I don't think our lifestyles are compatible. I like doing this and you like doing this, and I just don't see it working out. And that is fair. Right? So that's much more palpable, and it's easier to digest.
But if you love me, Bev, you will change.
No, you see, that's the thing, is that, I mean, it depends.
By the way, no, I was joking, right?
I do, but so many people think that, that they're going to change their partner, and no, you're not. So if you
there's this. Oh, I'm sorry. There's kind of this running narrative. I apologize for interrupting. If you love me, you will change. Like, in other words, you're going to do something different or want something different. And I think this is where unhealthy love starts to get birthed, when you tell someone, if you love me, you would do what I want. And a lot of people operate from that vantage point, at least what I've observed anyway.
That is
but it's fair to have differences, is my point. It's very fair. And by the way, most people are different, they're not identical with one another.
And that's what makes coupling so beautiful. Like, most of the time we're actually attracted from a very primitive standpoint to people who are opposite to us, right? That exhibit opposite traits. And that's a beautiful thing. So, asking someone to change is a deep form of criticism. And that's not going to land well with most people. Just think about, how that would land if someone said that to you, right?
Well, I think there's this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish that thought.
Well, again, I think what the healthy thing to do is to say, listen, this is what I need, right? I
Yeah.
need a certain level of, let's say, physical affection to feel connected to you. If your partner, let's say, is not very physical, and they could have a completely different love language.
Yeah.
And if they say to you, well, I'm not really comfortable with holding your hand when we go into the shopping center, it's a very, nondescript example, then you have to decide, can you live with that? Or is it a deal breaker?
Yeah.
Right? But holding on to hope that they are going to change their mind about that, that's not healthy.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take one more question before we wrap up. So we're going to do this quickly. Hi, Bev. I'm very into, oh, by the way, it's Mystic Tarot Cafe, tea time for Lola. I want to say that entire name out. Bev, I'm very independent from a young age, yet I'm nervous about driving. I learned as an adult, but this is a big barrier. Do attachment styles show up or change depending? Well, we talked about, can you change it? You remember you and I talked about this beforehand? We talked about, can an attachment style change? I think that's where she's going with this.
Okay, I'm just reading the question. I learned as an adult, but this is a big barrier. Do attachment styles show up or change? Okay, so attachment styles are generally formed very early on, as we talked about. But as we go through life and we experience different traumas, that absolutely can imprint on us, right?
Okay.
So the fact that you are nervous about driving wouldn't necessarily be connected to attachment styles, but it would be connected to what is going on inside of you in terms of trauma that you have experienced. So I don't know if, for example, you were in a car accident or you witnessed a car accident or something of that regard that imprinted on you that this was scary or unsafe. But I can tell you, for example, that people who have driven all of their lives, suddenly who get into a car accident and then they try to drive again and they can't. The fear overtakes them. This is a trauma response. So, and again, trauma is not about what's happened out there. Trauma is about how you internalized it. Right. And what happened inside of you, how you internalized it from that external event. So the fact that you're having difficulty driving, I mean, I'd be happy to work with you. There's something there. There's something that is scaring you. And I'm sure we could figure that out. But it's not really necessarily tied to attachment styles.
Okay. By the way, for the record, as I've gotten older, I don't like driving. I'm like, I've driven like 1 million miles in my life. And I don't know if that's the exact number, but all of a sudden I'm like, I can't wait for self-driving cars. I mean, like literally I just walk in and it just goes, I mean, like without any glitches to it. Like I can't wait for that day. But certainly, I say this because driving at night is really the bigger issue. It's as you age, when you have to use these, it's just not as easy. So I can relate to a little bit what she shared. Well, Bev, this was a fun conversation, learning about fearful, dismissive, and all the nuances that go into how we feel loved, being in love, attachment, all that stuff. We went down some really fun rabbit holes. Can you share with everyone again how they can connect with you?
Thank you. I absolutely can. So my company is called Securely Loved. So securelyloved.com. We are a group of practitioners. We're all certified attachment practitioners. And it's a great group. I know you're just seeing my face here, but there's a whole team of people who work just in the field of attachment theory. And they're fantastic. You can go to our website and you can book a 20-minute free consult, meet any one of the practitioners that you want. And then, if you want to work with us, we would be happy to help you on your journey towards secure attachment.
Oh, and by the way, really quickly, someone posted this. Can they take the attachment test on your site?
They
Okay.
can. So there is a quiz, which is interesting because someone asked earlier, how can you tell, the attachment
Yeah.
style? So there is a quiz that will give you a general, quick insight into your own attachment style. So if you go to securelyloved.com, you will see the attachment quiz. It takes 5 to 10 minutes and it'll tell you where you fall. And I think that is a really good step in terms of awareness of your own attachment style. And if you are dating someone and you want to have a little fun with them, you can say, hey babe, here's a little quiz I'd like you to take if you're unsure where they fall. I've done that before. I've said,
I've
hey, this
done
is a
it
fun
too.
thing to do.
By
Not
the
only
way, I did the test the other day after you sent me to it, and I
oh,
was majority secured, but my defaults weren't as my anxious wasn't over the line of secure. I was more secure this time than previously. So I've grown a little bit.
I know you've done a lot of work. I know that you
Yeah.
have. And again, it's a journey, right? And it's a continuum. So when we talk about like dismissive avoidance and anxious preoccupy, we're sort of talking about the extremes. But most people fall somewhere in the middle where they are primarily secure or primarily, let's say, dismissive avoidant, but then leaning a little bit anxious. So
Yeah.
nobody fits into one box precisely,
Yeah.
right? Because and it also is a continuum that it evolves, right? Just like
Yeah.
someone asked earlier, can a different trauma or something you've experienced, can that influence your attachment style? It sure can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I want to reach in and give you a big hug of appreciation, Bev. Everyone, check out her website listed below at Securely Loved. We'll bring Bev back in a few months and talk about this in a little bit. We'll get a little more granular as we did tonight. So, everyone, I want to